Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's HathiTrust 101 webinar. I am Melissa Stewart. I use she, her pronouns. I am the member relations specialist for HathiTrust, and we are going to start out today and do a little round robin of everybody else is here. So let's start with Jessica Rohr.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I am the communications and marketing strategist here at HathiTrust, and I use she, her pronouns.
Okay, how about Betsaida? I'll go to you.
Thank you. Glad to be here. My name is Betsaida Reyes. I'm the head of humanities and social sciences with Penn State University.
And Denise.
Hi, Denise Pan, Senior Associate Dean for Collections, Finance, and Partnerships at the University of Washington.
Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nathan Mealy. I am the Associate University Librarian for Discovery and Access at Wesleyan University.
And Dracine.
Hi, everybody. Dracine Hodges, Associate University Librarian for Collection Services at Duke University.
All right, I am going to share my screen. Okay, you should all be seeing my screen now. All right, great. All right, so for today, we are going to start out with just a short introduction. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how HathiTrust is by libraries for libraries, where we'll do a section on collaboration and governance, collections, and then services. And between each of these sections, we're going to pause and hear from our panelists on each of these topics. We should have plenty of time for Q&A in the end. Please type in your questions at any time in the Q&A or in the chat, whichever you have available. I am understanding that there are some previous versions of Zoom that don't have the Q&A anymore. So just Q&A or chat, and we'll be monitoring those after the session. So HathiTrust's mission is to contribute to research, scholarship, and the common good by collaboratively collecting, organizing, preserving, communicating, and sharing the record of human knowledge. Our vision is to be a vital catalyst for emerging forms of research, teaching, and learning that engage the scholarly and cultural record. And our values are trust, access, equity, diversity, and inclusion, resilience, constructive, meaningful engagement, and leadership. And we use all of these to guide our work every day. So HathiTrust was founded in 2008 by the University of Michigan, along with the rest of the Big Ten Academic Alliance and the University of California, to be a shared digital repository to preserve their collections scanned by the Google Books Project. In 2011, they held a constitutional convention to begin to develop the organizational and governance structure that we still use today. By 2017, we grew to over 100 members, and by 2022, we doubled our membership to 200 members, largely due to the implementation of a tiered fee model in 2020 that allowed smaller institutions to be able to afford to join. Today, we have over 19 million volumes in our digital library. Over 8 million of those are open for reading in the US, and 5.8 million are open worldwide. We have 218 members serving over 300 campuses in 9 countries across 4 continents. We have 23 core staff, but then we are supported by over 50 member library staff contributing time to our governance and programs. We have 4 host institutions, the University of Michigan, California Digital Library, Indiana University, and the University of Illinois. And now I'm going to talk about collaboration and governance. So the Board of Governors is our decision-making body responsible for setting our goals and objectives. It is composed of 6 members appointed by the founding institutions and 6 members elected by the membership. The nominations period for new board members opens in July. The slate is approved by the board in August, and elections are held in September. Only official member representatives, which are usually but not always the library director, are eligible to serve on the board. Then we also have a program steering committee, which is appointed by the board to advise both HathiTrust staff and the board on shaping initiatives and developing policies for our work. Members of this group are typically experienced in senior leadership at their library. The nomination period typically begins in March, and new members are appointed by the board in late May. We currently have 3 active groups comprised of staff from member libraries. Our user support team. When you contact support, your questions are triaged by staff at member libraries. This is really important and rewarding work. The call for new members generally goes out in July, so please consider serving on this team. Our member engagement committee are the lovely people on this panel today. They are helping us better engage with our members. We are beginning a collection advisory committee later this year to help guide our collection strategy. The contributions of digitized content by over 65 members to HathiTrust is essential to our shared mission of preserving and providing access to the record of human knowledge. This is what enables all of our services. Depositing content is not required of members, and through their annual member fee, all of our members support the preservation infrastructure and maintenance of our collection. All right, now I am going to stop sharing and turn it over to Jessica and our panelists.
All right, thank you. We are going to start with a question for Denise specifically and see who else has things to weigh in on. So Denise, you've been involved for quite some time with HathiTrust. So what have you seen as a particular strength of HathiTrust's governance model?
Yeah, and I think when I think about that idea, what is the strengths of government? It is, in fact, the essence of what it is to be in a membership organization and having that shared governance process. So in commercial relationship between libraries and for-profit nonprofits, you might be able to participate in the process of being advisory board or customer, but that dynamics of that library representatives may be able to influence decisions, but in real governance, in what we're describing here, you do have more of an opportunity to really have a stake and describe what it is, be part of how decisions are made and actually operationalizing it. So what I really love about HathiTrust is how it's framed in these conversations. It's really a collaborative partnership that is co-managed and co-funded by academic and research libraries. That transparency that I see in how the tier process of the costs for the digital collections and how that allocation is shared out. That is not always the common thing that is described to participants. And also how individuals, as Melissa had described earlier, describing these different committees or opportunities to engage in that process, all of those things together, I think, flush out that governance. And then myself particularly, I've been able to serve as a member of the program steering committee, as a chair, and now the member engagement. So that ongoing conversations of being asked and then being able to have received what I'm seeing, and we see what could be the strengths and the value of the organization that we share together. So I have a question for Nathan, if I may. Nathan, what does collaboration and the value of collaboration mean to you in the context of Hathi's history and the current moment mean to you?
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer in collaboration, in that it lies at the heart of what libraries are all about and how we best do our work. I think it's a key for how libraries move forward with all the many challenges that are facing us. And HathiTrust is a fantastic example of an organization that really leverages shared governance to make it a stronger organization. With HathiTrust, you can participate, member staff can participate in the program steering committee and really play a key sort of leadership role for HathiTrust. You can contribute to the user support team and impact everyday experience for users and numerous libraries. And overall, HathiTrust creates lots of different opportunities for member library staff to contribute and be impactful. And I think as well, even outside of those formal governance structures, something I've experienced at Wesleyan is that there are opportunities to work with HathiTrust staff to try to accomplish goals that your organization has for HathiTrust. So for example, with Wesleyan, we really want to enable more small institutions to contribute to the digital library. That's been a challenge for us to accomplish on our own. And so we've worked with HathiTrust to really blueprint that path forward so we can share it and make it more widely available to other libraries. So I think the shared governance really makes all of that possible and means that HathiTrust better reflects the goals of all of its members, irrespective of how the breadth of that membership grows over time.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen again and we will move on to the next section. Right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the collection. So the majority of items in our collection are books and serials. We do have quite a few music scores and then some smattering various other formats, but mostly we are dedicated to books. Just over half the collection is in copyright, so it is not viewable. It is only searchable. And another 5% is undetermined. If we don't know the copyright status of an item, we keep the item closed. And then 42% is in the public domain in the US. So this graph shows how that content is broken down by decade. Unsurprisingly, the more recent the publication date, the higher the percentage of copyrighted content. We do support Creative Commons licensing. Rights holders can contact us and send us a licensing agreement so that we can open that title for everyone. We do encourage members to deposit digitized content. If you are a member institution and you're interested in depositing your digitized content, please contact us and our staff will work with you to go through the process. We recently published some guidelines to help members decide what to deposit. Some examples are scholarly materials you would want to maintain access to during an emergency, government documents, unique collections, and items that can be open. All right, and I'm going to stop sharing again, and we are going to talk to our panelists.
Okay, this is for Dracine and Betsaida. So the availability of digitized information obviously has exploded since 2008 when HathiTrust was founded. But in your view, what are the primary reasons academic and research libraries continue to rely on the grow and invest in HathiTrust and its collection?
So I guess I'll go first.
Dracine? Yeah.
Okay. So the thing I like to always keep in my mind is that HathiTrust has brand recognition now in a way that I think perhaps it didn't have as much pre-COVID 2020 and when the ETOS was turned on. And I have distinct memories of having had conversations with faculty members since then who were like, die hard, I need to have it in my hand kind of people. But, because of that experience during the pandemic, they are a little bit more flexible, a little bit more open. And so they now think about HathiTrust more than they did before, just as a matter of course. I think, and I'm so sorry if you can hear a leaf blower behind me that just started, of course, right when I got on. But anyway, the other thing I think about in terms of digitization in particular, Jessica, is that, there's been such a boom for digitization. And I think partnering with Hati has enabled some of that work for us, particularly. Thank you for confirming that, Mariah. But it has enabled some of some of that digitization work for us at Duke, particularly for our general collections, because I think, special collections, it's like kind of a different workflow. And for general collections, it has to be sort of targeted in some ways because it's just a bigger collection. And so some of the ways we've done that is by focusing on opening up books in our collections that, we have a service called Digitize This Book where a user can ask us to digitize a physical book if it's, meets the copyright permissions and things like that. And so, of course, we want to make it available beyond that original request. In addition, we are also working closely with the Duke University Press so that when there are titles that they decide these we want to open up, HathiTrust becomes a place where it feels natural for those materials to go to live and to be open more broadly, more globally, and also taking the metadata with it, which we know will be of a quality standard. So I will hand it over to Betsaida.
Thank you. That's a great way of thinking about it because what I was thinking is that it's the curated access to materials. There's a ton of digitized materials out there, but not all of it. It's curated in a way that it's when researchers are using or when librarians are accessing the data, they know what they're getting. It's a platform that we're aware of, that we know how to use. We know about the quality. Someone's looked at this. It's not just random things being digitized on the internet. It's also going to be stable because I know that that tends to be a problem when people are using materials from all over, and then you go back to try to go back to the source, and it's not available. So I think that coupled with the brand recognition, as you mentioned, Dracine, it's the fact that it's a curated access to collections that it's really important. And then I think it's as we move forward, in decades in the early 20th century, there was a lot of aggressively collecting materials and building libraries everywhere. Now we're running up against digitized content being popular, widely available, a lot of ebooks, a lot of, databases. So how do we maintain a balance to access to high quality research collections when our spaces, there's pressures to turn our spaces over from stacks into more student center spaces. So I think this is where is a need to maintain that balance of, yes, we still provide access to your more traditional research materials while also repurposing some of our physical spaces in our libraries.
All right, great. I am going to reshare my screen and
Can I ask one follow-up question,
yeah,
Melissa?
yeah, go ahead.
We
Yeah.
have a minute to do that.
No, we do. Go ahead.
And this is for actually any of the panelists. But does the HathiTrust collection and the data derived from it help your library with any local collection decision making? That's something that we don't often talk about a lot, but I'm just curious.
We do. So I mentioned pressures on physical spaces. We have been, unfortunately, doing a lot of deselection and collections review at a large scale because of different factors. And one of the things that we've been doing is at first, people would just get reports and go through the data and make decisions. And then we had to go and check against retention records. And we realized, why are we making people make decisions on items that we already committed to retain? So then we started to pull the reports, like what is something that we already committed to retain, remove those from the report so we're not essentially asking them to do the work twice. That's one way that we're using it. Another one is we had to move a specific reference collection into a very small room where we had only so many linear inches to work with. And in that decision-making process of what we keep physical copies of and what, we deselect, we basically compare to what we have on Hattie and kind of make those decisions. Again, not items that are retained, that we're committing to retain, but items that are accessible through there that can be of use, particularly to catalogers for older materials where they have to go back and look at description. The other use that we've had is we had many decades ago a donation of an entire collection from a Latin American lawyer and a philosopher. And for some reason, when those items were brought in here, they were held by Luis Alberto Sanchez. When they were cataloged, they just kind of went everywhere based on Library of Congress classification instead of having a single note that indicated that they kind of went together. And we have been pulling those together to add a note to the catalog record. Well, some of them have markings. We know now that they're physical markings on the books, but as you can imagine, these are hundreds of books. We don't have the time amongst all the things we're doing to go hunting through the stacks for them. Someone had the idea of, hang on, I'm sitting at a desk doing something else. Why don't I look at Hattie? I know what those markings look like. The items have been digitized. We know that. Can we utilize that data to kind of backtrack and recreate that list? And it's been really helpful. We found items from that collection in areas we didn't expect. We thought they were all going to be around history, Latin American history, and we found in almost every single classification. And in part, it was made a lot easier because they were able to do a deep dive on the HathiTrust collection to identify for those markings.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that. It's really exciting that the shared print initiative has this new phase of the pilot. And I think Betsaida had described beautifully sort of what the current state looks like. And I'm really excited as well how we could be moving to this additional phase in collaboration that is happening with CDL, HathiTrust, and West. The University of Washington is also a member of West, and so I feel like there is more opportunities for sharing and collaboration, and this partnership is really the multiplier effect is happening.
I was just going to quickly mention government documents in response to that question, Jessica. That's something that is top of mind here in terms of our space management. We've been pursuing a government documents resizing project for several years. And, part of that thinking is like looking for redundancies in places like Hathi for some materials that we either want to deaccession or we feel comfortable with having access through this. And obviously some feelings have changed about that because of the availability of government documents, particularly federal government documents, US federal government documents, and some of them no longer persisting in the ways we'd like them to. So I think that's another facet of what Hathi might provide.
And I would just note that for Wesleyan, at this point, HathiTrust is a really unique resource because it's both a collection that we have access to, but also a collection we can help build. And so we really, at this point, view it as practically an extension of our own local collection. And so in the context of collection review decisions, retention decisions, the availability in HathiTrust, whether that's already available or we can make it available in HathiTrust influences whether we just decide to keep the print or not. That really impacts how much emphasis we put on the discovery of HathiTrust items in our Primo system, where we take every avenue we can to be sure that that material is discoverable and usable by our patrons. And that's alongside all the other resources that we're already making discoverable. So it's a really critical resource for us today in a lot of different facets.
going to hold for questions, though there's some really cool ones coming in. So, Melissa?
All right, great. So one more section of me, and then we can have the panel and questions. All right, so the last section that I'm going to talk today is about our services. So we leverage our huge collection to help our members collectively tackle problems that are difficult for libraries to solve individually. I want to emphasize here that all of our services and programs that I'm going to talk about are included in the annual membership fee. We don't charge extra for using any of our services. Our services include our accessible text request service. This service allows members to designate staff both at the library and the Disability Services Office with access to everything in HathiTrust for the purpose of providing materials to their students and faculty with print disabilities. Our emergency temporary access service allows faculty in service and students at member libraries to access copyrighted titles that overlap with titles on their library shelves during times of unplanned service disruptions. Our upcoming resource sharing service will allow staff at member libraries to access copyrighted titles that overlap with titles on their shelves so that they can download excerpts and chapters to fulfill interlibrary loan or document delivery requests. We ran a pilot of this service in December, and we plan on rolling out the service to the full membership later this year. We also have several programs. Our shared print program that Denise talked about just a few minutes ago. This program, the goal is to ensure that for every digitally preserved item in HathiTrust, there is also a commitment to preserve a physical copy. And the new project that we're working on this year is a pilot with the California Digital Library to build a shared print dashboard so that all of our members of West and of HathiTrust that are participating in the shared print program will have their shared print commitments uploaded to this dashboard that will be available not just to members of the shared print program, but also to any HathiTrust member so that they will be able to look and see what items have shared print commitments on them to help with collection development decisions. We also have a copyright review program that is made up of, again, staff at member libraries who dedicate time to providing manual review on hundreds and thousands of titles to confirm copyright or to be able to open those items in the public domain. Our metadata quality improvement program allows staff at libraries that contribute content. They designate staff with special access to the titles they've contributed for the purposes of updating their catalog records. We also provide a variety of data sets to help with research. There are data sets that we can provide on request, as well as bibliographic record information we call the Hathi files, and is available to download from our website. By the end of 2026, we will begin hosting some derived data sets for programmatic research. And I am going to stop sharing now and turn it back over to our panel.
Okay. So I think all of you probably have an answer to this question. It's fairly broad, but so the HathiTrust collection is a core asset, as we've been talking about, that is shared by all members, whether people are contributing, whether libraries are supporting the maintenance and infrastructure. And it's the foundation of all of our services and programs. So could you all talk a little bit about how some of these services contribute to the value of your library and your academic community? You've talked about it a bit. I'll let one of you jump in and start.
Sure. Thank you. So that last portion that Melissa covered, I think is key because again, we all have access to print materials and lots of databases and other things, but it's what you can do with them. More and more what I hear from, particularly for subject librarians, is we need access to data that can be manipulated and glean new information out of that and maybe I'm not sure how this is done and is possible, but I don't think we could take our catalogs and produce reports for a general user that would allow them to see some of these things just from what we have in our holdings. There are databases that do this, but I think the fact that you can do more than just search what's in there, and also again the access, remote access, because in the past having that, and I think I forgot who of you mentioned, like, right, like people wanted to have print to work with things. That has changed so much. And this expands what that means beyond just your local collections.
I mentioned earlier how we treat HathiTrust as an extension of our collection today. I think two additional aspects that are really critical for us. One is, and I think Dracine mentioned this earlier, HathiTrust has a lot of name recognition now, has a lot of currency with our faculty. And so when we talk about deaccessioning titles because they're available in public domain and HathiTrust, our faculty are really comfortable with that avenue. They're comfortable using it themselves, turning their students to it, and that's really impactful for just supporting those conversations with faculty. And then secondly, the new interlibrary loan program that HathiTrust is rolling out is going to be huge, because up until now, our staff have to go to the stacks and digitize chapters from titles, and now we'll be able to request those portions of books that are in HathiTrust that we have access to. And it'll be a huge boon for our staff and saving time. And it's just another way of tapping into that collective collection that is going to be really valuable for us.
Okay. I was just going to add, just going back to the question of like digitization, I was thinking specifically of how HathiTrust has sort of helped us enable some sort of local interest projects. So one of the digitization efforts that we've pursued, my staff have pursued more recently, is, digitizing a papyrology collection. And, to Nathan's point, part of the getting the faculty buy-in who helped build that collection is that, oh, HathiTrust, yeah, that makes sense as a place where we would put those surrogates of these physical materials. So I think, it's a trust is in the name, and so that helps with building trust with our community, and just, trying, because, to the point I think Melissa made earlier about the infrastructure that Hathi provides, because it is really expensive and resource intensive to create infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure. And so having Hathi as a partner to do some of that is very helpful. And it feels like good return on your investment when you're sharing that infrastructure with other people who are equally invested, or other organizations, I should say, who are equally invested in the outcomes.
Adding on to that, I think that the strategy behind, I think, in those values of having like-minded colleagues to work with, and also thinking about that governance piece. And, I'm looking at Dracine and Nathan, who were part of the program steering committee. I think these times and places coming together, having shared values, shared out goals, and then sort of understanding with respect and trust of like your colleagues, of like, what are we trying to do here? What are the challenges and opportunities, understanding we're coming from different institutions with different challenges, but how can we all meet each other in sort of the shared navigation of how do we actually do this? How do we do it together? Because it is going to take all the hands together to dream up these programs, staff these services, build these collections, and being part of that process. So I think all of those, and it's been really gratifying being part of the Hathi family, to be creating these these initiatives and seeing them coming out the other, where they become the standard in which we do the work and the workflows. But it has to start from somewhere, from something, that kernel of an idea. And then some of these, because they are complicated, they take a little bit of time to kind of work through, but I think, know at the end, or we have confidence, that trust that Dracine was describing, that when we have something, it has been fairly vetted of the germination of the idea to a pilot to rolling out like a launch of a program. So from start to finish, and then how is it sustainable? That is the other piece where a lot of the initiatives that we're talking about, starting from pilot to more of a program, how is that ongoing work? And you don't always see that in a lot of these initiatives that happen in librarianship or libraries or in the world. So those are some of my thoughts, hearing my colleagues and the question.
If I could just add one quick thing there, I think as well, several of us were members of the Strategic Visioning Task Force that worked a couple of years ago to develop the current strategic vision for HathiTrust. And, I think one of the most significant challenges facing libraries today is how many services and platforms we are absolutely reliant upon that we have no voice in. Or the voice we have is not a real voice, right? We don't really have a seat at the table in practice. And HathiTrust is really the opposite of that. And the Strategic Visioning Task Force, the Program Steering Committee, all the various teams you can be part of, they're all ways that HathiTrust really ultimately does reflect the needs and interests of its members. And that's really powerful. And when it's also a tool that we can weave so closely into so many different aspects of the library's services, that's amazing. And it's a really huge opportunity for all of us to take advantage of.
Melissa, I think, do you have some wrap up, or are we continuing on
No, I don't have
questions?
I don't think there's any point in resharing the slides because we're just going to move into Q&A. So I think that we can just move right to Q&A. I don't need to share my
Yeah.
slides again.
So we definitely have some questions, probably, I think some that Melissa and I are better suited to answer, and then some for you all. And by all means, folks, continue to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. So I'm just going to go in order here. So Rachel asks, how does HathiTrust's approach to digitized books differ from internet archives? Let me count the ways, but I'll keep it simple. I mean, for one thing, HathiTrust does not do any digitization. So we are not receiving shipments of books to digitize. We rely on both ongoing digitization from Google partner libraries as well as local projects that a lot of you all have been describing today. Another key differentiator is that, as I think it was Betsaida was talking about, every item in the HathiTrust collection is something that was at one point curated by academic and research libraries. So that includes all of the cataloging, that includes all of the special selection. So the approach to just digitized books is inherently very different because of what has been intentionally collected. So that's kind of the short, clean answer. Then I read with interest the recent article featuring super user Marie Kincannon, whose Prices and Wages library guide has driven a lot of traffic to HathiTrust. 100% true. It's great. Do you think HathiTrust will implement any of her suggestions, especially regarding searching for frequently misscanned letters like O's for C's, or at least a list of such frequently missed OCR characters? Yes and yes, and we dream of the day when we have cleaner OCR, and it is something that we are always working towards. We do have a corrections team that asks oftentimes for rescanned materials, which sometimes can help with OCR correction. Some of it is just the nature of OCR, and certainly at times it does screw things up from search and discovery to other, I think, things that Marie's article or Marie's project talks about. What I do like, and I don't know that we have this, is that list of frequently missed OCR characters. I could see that being useful in a number of situations. So thanks for that, Rachel.
I would also say, just a plug for Maureen Concanon, because we love her. She did a presentation about her prices and wages library guide and how it drives traffic to HathiTrust. She did that a couple of years ago as part of our HathiTrust Community Week, and that is the recording of that is available on our YouTube channel. So check that out.
The next question is for Betsaida. Is any additional information available about the efforts to virtually reunite that donated collection through HathiTrust? It sounds like a really interesting and unique use.
Not at this point. And part of it is, as I mentioned, we are undergoing major projects related to our collections that deal with deselection and just moving stuff around due to a lot of different things. So this is stuff that gets done in between. And as people are, for example, inventory collection, they are on the lookout for those markers. When people are sitting at desk, they are looking stuff up, but it's not a project that has dedicated staff all the time. So eventually we're hoping to have more, but right now it's just whenever whoever knows about it has the time to search for them.
So this is, maybe any of you can answer this. When preparing materials for digitization, how do institutions typically verify whether a title or volume already exists in HathiTrust so work isn't duplicated? Is there a preferred search method or metadata workflow for tracking that? And if a 1928 edition already exists in HathiTrust, would institutions still digitize and contribute a 1927 edition? I think I can answer a little bit of that, and then maybe someone else might want to join in. I'm going to go in reverse here. So I think the important thing to remember is also that HathiTrust is a preservation first. That was our original mission, is for preservation. So there are a lot of reasons why a institution who's contributing content would still contribute 1927 edition for a lot of different reasons, different editions, obviously different introductions, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of the preparing materials for digitization and doing that kind of work to compare local collection with HathiTrust collection, there are some different strategies. I'm not sure if anyone here on the call can speak to that in terms of your local library workflows, or if you are at that close work.
I just want to add, because it came to my attention just recently, that there are some libraries out there that don't realize that HathiTrust will take multiple copies of an item. They think that, so yeah. It's okay if you want to deposit an item that we already have, we will still take it.
Yes.
You don't need to worry about deduping.
Yeah,
what we do have, go ahead, Nathan.
I was just going to say, so we have found that the process for confirming if a specific edition of a title exists in HathiTrust already is fairly time intensive and requires search in the catalog, and it's best done by somebody who knows HathiTrust's collection or the interface pretty well. We've had some student workers do it. The mileage has varied pretty significantly. But I will also say that it's really important for us. It's a worthwhile investment of time because the cost of digitizing materials to contribute is expensive. And so we want to make our impact as broad as possible. And so we are very careful about not, even though you can contribute multiple copies of the same item, we're very careful not to do that, just because we can be more impactful with our dollars by being sure the contributions are unique.
I was just going to add that we actually have a scribe, the Internet Archive scribe staffer that works on site here. And I'm just thinking about this in terms of duplication because we try to maximize that digitization by contributing it to Internet Archive and HathiTrust. And, going back to the earlier question about the difference, and to I think the point you were kind of making, Jessica, is that it's about the audience. Like you're expecting a more scholarly academic audience for Hathi, and maybe the Internet Archive audience is more casual, or just, might be lifelong learner who has a peculiar interest in, insert random topic. So I think it's just something I was thinking about as we were having this discussion too. But yeah, I'm not close enough to the work to tell you explicitly what my staff are looking for. I know they have like their checklist for how they verify what is eligible. And we try to do a lot of thinking about things before we even make them available to go into those digitization workflows. So a lot of thought has gone into it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also just add onto what Dracine said that one of the pathways to contribute materials to HathiTrust is through Internet Archive because they have
Yeah.
digitization facilities and it's pretty cost effective. So that even at the scale that you might be digitizing it, you can get a lot of mileage for your funds. And so the when you follow that path, the materials show up in an archive and they meet the needs of that one audience, and they also flow from there into HathiTrust and serve the longer term purpose. So you can actually get the benefit of both paths.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. Um, I think too, the other path for a lot of the collection, 95 or so percent of the collection is the Google digitization. And in that case, it is not the libraries, as I understand it specifically, is not necessarily consulted for that pick list. So there is some natural duplication, but then also that's opportunity to then do more local digitization if that is something you have the capacity for. I did put something in the chat, which is Melissa referenced earlier. It's fairly new, so it is just in this Google format right now, which is specific to contributing content. And we are frequently asked, what can we contribute? What is HathiTrust looking for? And this is a list for inspiration.
I would say too that just one that I just remembered that we do provide overlap reports on request. So you can request an overlap report, and that based on the print holdings that you've submitted, you'll be able to see what you have that we don't have. It'll be indicated in that overlap report. So that can also help with digitization decisions.
Next question then. How is HathiTrust doing with ADA Title II web accessibility? Does it comply with web content accessibility guidelines 2.1 level AA at this point? It depends on exactly what you're talking about. We are in the midst of an accessibility kind of program where we have a number of initiatives. Our HathiTrust.org website is absolutely meeting all the Title II standards. We are up to par in that regard. A lot of our catalog and book viewing interface also meets the Title II accessibility guidelines. What is not yet fully in compliance for accessibility is the actual PDFs of the book images. So the images themselves, we cannot claim to have full accessibility compliance, but we, as I mentioned, have multiple projects where we are working on ways to, at scale, try to remediate that as soon as we are able to. So that is that one. Kelly says, we have increasing options, including DPLA. Is there any thought on bringing others into HathiTrust? I'm not quite sure I fully understand that question, Kelly, but I can try this. It sounds like what you're asking is about kind of collaboration and partnerships external to HathiTrust. And, I think as all of our panelists have spoken to, the value of collaborating, not just interinstitutionally through HathiTrust, but then also, looking outside and finding peers to band together with. So we have definitely done that in different projects and efforts over the years, and do look forward to more of that going forward. I don't have anything specific right now to say, but I think, yeah, the more the better, right? Katya says, I'd love to hear more about MQuip and perhaps a specific example of a project that a library has worked on. That I don't know offhand, and I'm not sure I can put my colleague Graham on the spot for answering that question. We do have some examples of that, and Katya, I think I would need to get back to you. There have been the projects that I know about have been specific to, for example, remediating catalog records to be more aligned with more common, more contemporary terminology, not just Library of Congress, what has been accepted for decades and decades, but there has been, I think, instance of people using MQuip to do some of that local catalog remediation, and then that can be re-ingested into, yeah, there we go. Graham just put a link in the chat here, which I think is specific to an MQuip project. Matthew asks, what are some examples of undetermined content that were seen in that chart? Melissa, I'm not sure if you have an example or if that is...
I don't have specific examples. I think that there is we have items in the collection where the copyright isn't clear because of metadata issues. And that is what our copyright review program does. They're constantly reviewing those items to be able to determine whether the copyright is still active. It is a labor intensive process that they do. So it's really, we really appreciate that. Also, we're very strict on our copyright also. So we are, I know, for example, some of our content depositors sometimes will say, hey, you have this closed and we know it's in the public domain and can be opened. So that's happened several times too, because we just tend to be very cautious if we really don't see the copyright status until we're able to verify it, we keep it closed.
Okay, the final question from Rachel. Is there a public call for carefully scanned fold-out material or rescans of incompletely scanned volumes due to foldouts or missing pages that are discovered by researchers? Is there a good workflow for reporting missing pages and foldouts? Yes, I think the public call, we at HathiTrust don't have a specific call out for rescanning or incomplete scan volumes. Certainly, if you run into them or researchers run into them, we do have a path to report that. And then we work with the contributing institutions, sometimes Google, to rescan items. We don't have, as I said, a list of those gaps specifically or those particular problems. So if you or anyone in your library runs into missing pages or quality issues, you can send a message to support@hathitrust.org. And we have our bibliographic corrections group, and our quality corrections group that work on those kinds of issues. A question from Matthew: does each member institution have a representative that interfaces with HathiTrust when issues arise, or to negotiate things, or whatever the case may be?
Yes, we have our members have kind of two different one is a member representative, and that is our voting representative. Again, that's generally the library dean or director responsible for decision making. They vote for the board every year, and they also vote to approve the budget, or in the very rare cases, if we have a bylaws change that needs to happen, it would be the member representative that would vote for those things. But we also ask all of our members to designate a primary contact. And that again is our go-to person for all other issues that might not rise to the level of the library dean, or they are our kind of go-to person to report problems or issues. So yes, we do have several different contacts. We also maintain print holdings contacts specifically for print holdings issues, and some other specific contacts as well. And if you're
I
not
would say
sure,
also that Melissa
yeah,
is a great resource.
yeah, I was going to say if
Melissa
you're
is a
not
great
sure,
resource.
let me know, or
Yeah.
because I know there's so much turnover in libraries, I can't possibly keep up. So if you're not sure who your primary contact is, or you think your primary contact might be somebody that is no longer with your institution, please reach out to me and let me know. And we'll get that updated.
No more questions in the queue, so wait, see if anyone comes up with anything else.
Yeah, these have been really great questions. Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you to our panel. This is the first time we have done HathiTrust 101 sessions in the past, but never with a panel. And this member engagement committee has been really great to work with.
Thanks, everyone.
So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording.